And so he ended up doing that $500,000 gift. And he was in my portfolio and he was rated properly, at the $100,000 to $250,000 level. So perfectly right in the wheelhouse. But I can't tell you how long it took me to get that man to that first visit, because I think it was a solid 18 months of trying, and it finally landed. And after that first meeting in person to close date, it was like less than 4.5, 5 months. And the reason I love that gift so much is because, and he just wanted to see students get this opportunity to have their lives transformed by sponsoring an internship. And I was like, that's an awesome reality that you get to play into and actually get to help benefit someone younger than you. And he was like, and he was funny. He was like, I would love it if we would launch the next sportscaster. He was so excited about it. And he loves the little college of Kenyon College.
Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Now, Jason, you're a person of color. You're a male in a profession that's predominantly white and female. I think I've seen stats as high as 75%, maybe more than that, are actually white and female in the fundraising profession. What's that been like for you? The reason I ask, we both have managers and entry-level fundraisers who might be listening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything about your experience as a person of color that you'd hope they'd learn from you?
It's interesting that you asked that question, because when I think about that reality of how often the BIPOC demographic thinks about their space and their position in the space they're in when it comes to the workforce, a burden comes up, a weight comes up. Sometimes it feels untenable. For some reason, I don't know if it's because of the fact that, I've had to work through it a lot of my life. I come to that space in an open way of saying, I don't mind educating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind being the one who gets all the dumb questions asked of me. Oh, you're Indian. Do you know so-and-so? Oh, you're Indian. And I'm like, yes, I know every single 1 billion Indians in the world, But you know what I'm saying? Like it's that
I have
space
some
of like,
sense. Yeah.
and it's not a big deal. I think it's funny. I think it's silly.
Yeah.
But on my bad days, I could easily just snap.
Yeah. Yeah.
I made a commitment in my heart a long time ago. If I want to see things change, I have to be a person who's willing to bear some of the ignorance.
Yeah.
And realize that people aren't willfully trying to put me in my place more times than not.
Yeah.
But they're just simply hoping that I'm a safe enough person that they can ask the right questions to.
Yeah.
So they can actually be better at relating to people of color. And honestly, I don't know if a lot of people I've met in our generation are good at that. They don't have the long-suffering mentality. I think for me, I realize it comes from my dad.
Okay.
He kind of cultivated that heart in me. He would always tell me, he's like, they won't get you, and that's okay. He's just like, help them get you. Help them understand you. But he would always say, if you're not a person who's trustworthy, they'll never have a chance to get you. And so that willingness was cultivated in me by my dad. And our culture, as reactionary as it is, I don't know if that's been cultivated well.
Yeah.
So like, even for Kenyon, like when they came after me when I was at Ohio State, the executive director there, she was awesome. She looked me up on LinkedIn. She knew mutual colleagues. So she knew that I kind of fit what she was looking for.
Right.
And so when we actually talked on the phone, she was very forthright. She's like, yeah, I'm looking for some more diversity in our candidate pool. And I was like, oh, that's cool. You're looking for a brother of color. And she started laughing. She's like, actually, no, but yes. And I'm like, okay, now talk to me. And she was honest. She was like, yeah, that's a nice ancillary benefit that you are a person of color. She's like, I'm actually more interested in you for the fact that you'd bring diversity of thought. And I said, okay, talk to me about that. And she's just like, well, I know from your pedigree and I know from what people have said about you that you do hold your faith and it centers who you are, and you might be more conservative than some. And I was like, actually, I'm not as conservative as you think. I think if people looked at my stances, they would say I'm a moderate.
Right.
And she was honest. She was like, yeah, but that's more conservative than most of our team right now.
I see.
And she was honest. She was like, our current president wants us to be a place that has space for all diversity of thought.
Hmm.
And I was like, you know what? That's a conversation I can get around.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun getting to know that culture at Kenyon and seeing that prized reality of let's have a civil discourse.
Yeah.
Because it's rare. I don't think it's cultivated well in a lot of spaces. But I mean, even there, I had to have conversations with younger people of color who were on
Yeah.
our staff team, and just be honest with them. I'm like, they were saying how tired they were of being the educators, and I said, well, as soon as you get tired of being the educators, then you are starting to disqualify everybody around you as a willing learner.
Hmm.
I was like, there has to be responsibility on both of our ends. We have to be willing to educate. And if you're not there, that's fine. Own it. But I hope that someday you actually move to the other side of the spectrum where you can be an educator and you can be willing to have those conversations. You can be a safe space for someone to ask just simple questions that feel like, from a person of color's point of view,
Mm-hmm.
seem ignorant. But
Yeah.
when in reality, ignorance isn't a bad thing. It's just a reality of life. We're all ignorant in some ways or another, and we're all ignorant in certain knowledge bases, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you saying that because as a white guy who grew up in a very white, homogenous sort of background, I didn't. There's a lot of things about more diverse cultures that I didn't know anything about. And I did know about Chinese culture because I grew up in a biracial family in that way,
Hmm.
but I didn't know anything about Black culture at all. And I've been fortunate to learn a lot of stuff from some people that were kind enough to be patient with me to teach me some things. I'll never forget. Gosh, it was probably 2-3 years ago. I was listening to NPR, and there were some ladies on there talking about their experiences as African American women and dealing with hair and how their hairstyle impacted the perception of professionalism and
Oh,
the
absolutely.
pressure they felt of that. And as a person who's never had to worry about that, it really floored me because I just never considered it because no one ever told me. And so I immediately reached out to a colleague of mine who is African American to ask her. Well, I asked her permission first if I could ask her a question about race, and she was so kind and so patient and walked me through that whole experience that she'd had with that, and it taught me a lot, and it gave me a chance too, as her colleague, to say, hey, please wear your hair however you want. It won't change my view of you at all. But I appreciate the generosity with which you're expressing yourself uh, i- in that same way.
Yeah, and I look at it and I just simply say, this will be my encouragement to any person of BIPOC descent. As you enter the workforce, even the fundraising world specific, be okay with the fact that people are generally really, really interested in other people and they really do care about other people. I don't know very many fundraisers who are mercenary types. The fundraisers that I meet, even in the education world, are pretty excited about what they're raising for.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're tied to it on a deeper level than just I'm going to get the sale, as some corporate sales guys are. You know what I'm saying? Because
I
they're
do. I do.
And so give people the benefit of the doubt and help them see, like in those moments, like don't be afraid to speak and say what's so in those moments where you feel uncomfortable, but do it in a kind way where it invites conversation, and don't do it just to shut someone down or put them in their place. I hope there's a generosity about the way that we not only speak about fundraising, but a generosity about the way we actually invite people into all sorts of conversations.
Yeah. Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Academy. Are you a nonprofit leader who's new to fundraising? Are you feeling crushed by your fundraising goals and not sure how to find success? My online class, crafted from my 25 years of experience and more than 5,000 donor meetings, Abundant Vision Academy, will give you the confidence and understanding you need to start building relationships with donors and having gift discussions in just 110 minutes. You'll get 14 videos covering all the topics you need to find success in fundraising. You can take it at your own pace and can watch as many times as you'd like. This is one of the best deals in fundraising continuing education you can get today. To make sure you get off to a strong start in 2024, I'm offering a 50% discount to anyone signing up for my course this spring. That's a $375 value. Enter the coupon code SPRING2024 at checkout to claim your 50% discount. That's SPRING 2024. Head on over to thomas-dauber-s-school.teachable.com and click on Abundant Vision Academy to get your discount today. The link is in the podcast description. I know at OSU and at Kenyon, you were a real road warrior. You were out there on the road,
Yeah.
visiting people, flying here to there. Do you have any tips for our listeners on the best ways to get that initial appointment with someone who doesn't know you?
Mhm.
How do you overcome the initial skepticism you might experience on the phone? Are there ways you found that make it easier for a constituent to say yes to your phone call even?
Sure. I think in some ways, one is just owning it, owning the fact that you are a fundraiser
Right.
and not hiding it, not trying to backdoor anybody in any way. It's all the things that if you're a good fundraiser and you were taught by some good fundraisers,
Mhm.
hope, hopefully this is just redundancy for you.
Yeah.
But owning who you are and simply acknowledging it, but also saying part of my role is to hear your story and to see if there's any desire for you to connect back to us. And if there is, great. Let's talk about that more. If there's not, then let's just have a one-time meeting just so I can hear your story, just so I can see the impact of my institution on you. It depends on what institution you're raising for. So it depends on how you're going to craft that. But for me, it was Grateful Patient fundraising at Ohio State, the Western Medical Center, and it was also alumni fundraising with Kenyon. So I had those bases. And more times than not, that's also what's going to happen with any foundation or nonprofit that you work for.
So when you've got that person on the phone
Mhm.
and they say to you, "Jason, I read the alumni newsletter. I know what's going on. You don't need to come see me." What do you say to them?
And I when that happened, and it happened often, I'll be like, okay. I'd be like, yeah, I understand your point of view, but the fact is, like, I'm trying to help you understand that we as the college prize your story. And so if you want to just share, I'd love to hear. I'd love to share with you what's going on at other things at the college, but I just want to hear your story
Yeah.
to see what you're like and see how Kenyon, how the Ohio State University has helped you become the person you are.
Yeah, I find, and this is true with corporate relations as well, but a more holistic approach of engagement goes a long way because I've often found, in most of my experiences in the health sciences, I would meet alums that were doing very specific, interesting things. And
Hmm.
just having that knowledge could be super valuable because there might be a student organization that would really love to get a Zoom call with that person.
Hmm.
Or, there may be a class where, they may even have a chance to speak in the class. Just all sorts of things like that. Not to mention interesting stories that we may come back and share with, Alumni Magazine to say, well, hey, you should see what this person is
Yeah.
doing with a pharmacy degree,
And so the other thing too is like when I hear those things, and yeah, those are the same things I talked about. But the fact is, no one wanted to hear that as the reason why they wanted to be on the phone or why they wanted to get the first meeting. And so, like when I was talking to people, I was just trying to help them understand, like I'm meeting with you. I'm giving you a free cup of coffee just to tell me your story, just to even see what's going on. And when there's a genuine interest that people can sense, they're open. I mean, they're open more times than not when you knock down the doors of trying to be shady or schmoozy.
Yeah.
Uh, And in that first meeting, I would often say, "Hey, this is an awesome story of what you're doing. I would love to actually tell the story a little bit. Can I have my alumni magazine?" I can't tell you how many times I had people reference to our alumni magazine that would get featured.
Hmm.
They loved it.
Yeah.
And then the nicest thing was they would often say, "Hey, you need to meet with so and so because they've got some cool stories too."
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And so I think it's just being radically transparent and not hiding, not trying to backdoor anybody in any way, and being open to a discovery visit. Now it's different when I inherited certain people in my portfolio and they were prior givers. I was more forthright with them. Well, not I wasn't more forthright. I was just as forthright in a different way. I would say, "Hey, I want to say thanks for your giving, and I also want to get to know you because I've been assigned to be the person who stewards a relationship with you. And to do that well, I need to know you.
Mhm.
So is it okay when I'm in town just to get a chance to get to know you and also share with you the impact of your giving up to this point and also share with you some other things you might want to think about in the future?" And more times than not, for those people I inherited in my portfolio, as soon as they heard me honestly just say, "Hey, part of my role is to actually steward this relationship on behalf of the college."
Yeah.
They were they were like, I've never heard anyone just flat out say it to me like that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
was like,
I think some people are afraid to draw back the curtain of the prospect management process, aren't they?
yeah. And it's just like if they realize the college prizes or any institution prizes them enough to say, "We're hiring a person to make sure you're taken care of,"
That's right.
that speaks volumes.
Sure does. Yeah.
And we have to be confident with it.
Yeah. It's kind of like concierge service, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So of all these calls you've made, I know you've closed some great gifts.
Mhm.
When you think back on your career, all the way even back to your first years in the nonprofit world, tell me a couple stories about the most memorable donor calls you've ever had. What lessons did you learn from those calls?
Um, so I've got two stories and they're very drastically different, but they led both to $500,000 gifts. So one, I'll start with the most recent first. So, this was last fall when I was with Kenyon. Um, I've been trying to reach out to this, donor in my portfolio who had given, 60, $70,000 over the life of his giving and was a faithful guy on all the boards, on the message boards and stuff like that. Just sweet, tender guy from everything I ever heard. But he was the hardest to get a hold of for some reason. He would only respond to every fourth or fifth email. I missed him twice in my trip to the Carolinas, and finally, I said, "Would you have time to connect when I'm in town?" He's like, "Well, I don't know." He's like, "I'll be doing this all day." I was like, "I'll meet you at your club. I'll meet you at your country club." And he's like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." And so we get there. We have a great meeting. It was 45 minutes to an hour, shooting the breeze, hearing about his life story, sharing with him what's going on. He was hugely involved in baseball and he really wanted to see something done. And so we start talking about it. Um, but our baseball fund had already been fully funded to the point where we didn't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I had to reevaluate after the conversation with him just what we could do. And so at this point, he becomes really responsive to text messages. I learned that. And so we're going texting back and forth. And all that to say, by the end of it, we worked through a process where he decided to do a $250,000 cash gift along with a $250,000 estate gift. So that way he could fund a position for for the the Sports Information Department at Kenyon. And because one of his things that he realized that Kenyon did for him during his career was he got to announce basketball games. He got to announce soccer games. And it actually led to his career in communications. And so for him, he feels like that time was so formational. Even though he was a varsity baseball player and he loved his time on the baseball team, he realized what actually impacted him more was having that space And so he ended up doing that $500,000 gift. And he was in my portfolio and he was rated properly, at the $100 to $250,000 level. So perfectly right in the wheelhouse. But I can't tell you how long it took me to get that man to that first visit because I think it was a solid 18 months of trying.
Oh, wow.
And it finally landed. And after that first meeting in person to close date, it was like less than 4.5, 5 months. So perseverance paid off in that one.
That's
Um,
right.
the other gift, and the reason I love that gift so much is because there was a sweetness and gentleness about this little old white man. And he just wanted to see students get this opportunity to have their lives transformed by sponsoring an
Yeah.
internship.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's an awesome reality that you get to play into and actually get to help benefit someone younger than you. And he was like, and he was funny. He was like, I would love it if we would launch the next sportscaster. He was so excited about it. And he loves the little college of Kenyon College, you know. So that was one story. And it was just there was a sweetness about who he was. This other story though was a different story, and I love it. She was a rock star, but she came up as an annual giver, maybe $500,000 every Christmas time toward the college. And she came up, I think she was rated at $50,000 or less, according to our ratings. And so I make the call. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be down in Charlotte. Can we connect? She's like, yeah, I'd love that. So we connect and we're talking. And the place she had us go was not what I would have expected from someone rated at $50,000 or below. It was a little higher end. And then she started telling me about all the things she does. She's a chaplain. And I was like, okay, so that probably fits. But then she started telling me, she's like, yeah, we're thinking about buying a house in Jackson Hole. I'm like, wait, say that again.
Right. Right.
I was like, wait a minute, talk to me now. And so as we started talking, it became apparent this woman who dearly loved her experience at Kenyon College had way more capacity than we ever knew.
Yeah.
And so we started talking more, and her husband's a major land developer in the area. And she's like, I love my college days. I gave up all sorts of time in my younger days in my career so that my husband could get this thing off the ground. And I'm like, that's great. She's just like, so we'll have to get him on board. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So we started talking about that.
Yeah.
And then at one point I was like, so what do you guys normally give to? And she started listing off the things. I was like, those sound like all your husband stuff. She's like, it is. She's like, you know what? I'm going to talk to him. I'm like, all right. And so she comes back, a couple weeks later. She's like, all right, it's my turn to give to what I want to give to. I'm like, all right. So we were going through this, what we were calling it. Oh my gosh, it was so long ago now. I don't remember what the campaign was. Kenyan Access Initiative. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Holy cow. It's been a minute. And she told me the story of how she got to meet and be roommates with an African American woman who never would have had a chance to be at Kenyon had not someone helped her with scholarships. And so the idea of her being able to do that for someone else really inspired her. She's like, so I really want to give to that. I'm like, I think that's great. So let's talk about what you want to do. And she's like, what do you think would be a good amount? And so I was like, well, we actually have a matching piece if you're willing to do it. $250,000 gift would be matched completely if you're willing to go there. And she's like, okay, can I have a couple days to think about it? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, I'll call you back. Is it okay if I call you back on Monday around this time? She's like, sure, do. She's like, all right, we're in. I'm like, okay, great. I was like, how do you guys want to do this gift? Are you thinking about it over the next 4 years, 5 years? She's like, no, we'll just cut you the check this year. I was floored. And I was like thinking to myself, damn, I probably could have asked for more. But here's the beautiful part. This is the part I love. As we talked more about it, I was like, you realize you have a voice that I don't know if you knew you had before. She goes, what do you mean? I go, your voice can move things. And you are a woman who's able to give at really significant levels, but you're also a woman who's able to articulate your thoughts, your values in ways that bring people to the table. And I was like, would you consider what that looks like for you? So as we started talking, she just was more intrigued with that whole thing. And so then I got a chance to connect her with Colleen, and they're developing a relationship. And I asked this woman specifically, I was like, what do you think about moving on the road down toward being a trustee at some point? I was like, and to be a trustee with us requires this much level of giving over a lifetime. And, that was a step up. And as soon as I said it, she didn't bat an eye. She was like, yeah, this is an amazing opportunity. And so I'm really excited about that gift because, one, we had no idea she had that kind of capacity. Two, I actually helped her find her voice.
Yeah.
To give to the things she wanted to give and the things that she wanted to care about. It also led her to actually give another gift to a college that her daughter was going to help them set up some things that they've been wanting to set up for a long time. She goes, Jason, I wouldn't have done that without you helping me through this process. And I'm like, that's really cool. I mean, yeah, it wasn't a gift to Kenyon, but she's still in the game in ways that really move her and move other people. And I'm really excited for that for her.
Oh, that's fantastic. And she won't forget that experience, that initial experience with Kenyon. I mean, that's really meaningful. That's all the time we have today. But be sure to tune in next week to hear the next part of this exciting conversation. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. As always, I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together toward major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.